Hello, friends. It's your guy, the knick-knack with the heart attack, Raptus, and I'm here to show you today how to build this simple Rick and Morty thin client. Maybe this is your very first iOS app. Maybe you want to learn some of the new stuff. I'm going to show you all the newest stuff and get you on track quick. So I promise it'll be easy. So let's go ahead and create a new project. I'll get rid of myself here. And the name's already there for me, Rick and Morty. And I'm just putting it right on my desktop. All right. So let's make a view model the new way. So I'm going to create a new file, Swift file, and this will be for characters. So character view model. And we're using the new observation framework. So I'm going to make this observable. And a class, character view model, like such. Now we want an instance of it. So I'm going to go to Rick and Morty app, and outside of the body, I'm going to create that instance. Character view model equals a character view model. Now we want to inject this character view model into our content view. So I'm going to make an environment variable, environment, a parentheses. It's going to be character view model dot self var character view model of type character view model. Now immediately the preview crashes, and this is annoying, so I'm just going to click ignore for now, and it might crash again. We're going to have to get out of this loop, and to do that I'm going to immediately start introducing the concept of mocks. So we're going to make a mock instance of character view model. And this is going to be a very simple mock. So I'm just going to say static func mock of type character view model. And we're just going to return a character view model. We could put the word return here. We don't need it if there's only one statement. So I'm going back to content view, and we're going to get hit with that error again. We can keep hitting ignore, and I'm going to say dot environment character view model dot mock. Now we're injecting this. Now I'm going to go to Rick and Morty app, and down below content view I'm going to say environment character view model. Okie dokie. Now let's inspect that network call. I'm gonna pop open my browser, and there is the network call, rickandmortyapi.com/API/characters, and the pages start at 1. This is hard to read. What I usually do is go to JSON lint or JSON formatter and validate. So this is kind of the structure. It's a big dictionary, and we get this info blob and this results array. We won't study it for too long, but I'll show you some of what I discovered about the structure. But we're just going to go ahead and build out that structure. So the character itself Like, for example, Rick as a character will be one of these guys, character. And we're going to be decoding these from JSON. So I'm going to say struct character, and this is going to be decodable. And the characters get an ID, which is an int, a name, which is a string. They always have those. The other fields they sometimes have. So there's a status, which is a sometimes have. Species, and I use optional strings to represent these sometimes have. Species, and then gender. And finally an image, which is really like a URL, image URL. So there's the character itself, but we've got a build structure for that outer dictionary too. I'm gonna make another new file for something called character response. And this will be a struct too, character response. And this is also decodable. And then we have that little info blob. We may as well parse it. We don't need it for this project, but let's make it anyway. So struct info, which is decodable. And this gets a count, whoops, which is an int. And a pages, which is an int. There's a couple other fields there. We don't have to put all the fields, so we're not doing that. There's more fields if you look at the API. Then I'm gonna make this info as such. And finally, the thing we're most interested in, results, which is an array of our character object. And I'll just kind of compress this a little bit. Looks good. Then I'm gonna make another new file, and this will be a nice little struct called network calls. And this is just going to host our, right now it's one network call. So network calls. The I to the O to the S. That's how you spell success. Stacking money to the ceiling. All right, let's add our network call. And I'm just gonna make this a static function to get all the characters. So static func characters. And let's make page number be an argument. So the page will be an int, and 1 is the first page. And we're using the new async API, so this is an async, and it can throw an error, returning one of these character responses, the outer dictionary object. So we need the URL. I'm going to get it from a string, so I'm going to say let URL string equals, and I've got that on my clipboard, everything but the page. So rickandmortyapi.com/API/characters, and page equals page. Then we want an actual URL. So I'm going to say guard let URL equals the URL from a string, the URL string. Otherwise, we can just throw an error since we're a throwing function. So I'm going to throw a URL error, and there's one called bad URL. Then we'll fetch the data from a URL session. So I'm going to say let data, and then this is the response, but we don't care about the response. Data response equals try await URL session dot shared dot data from URL. That'll be the data. we want to decode it into this decodable object. So let's do that. And to do that, we need a decoder. So I'm going to say let decoder equals a JSON decoder. And then let response equals try decoder dot decode, and the type is character response dot self from our data, and we can just return that response. Cool. We're so rich. All right, now let's use this observation framework and link up our stuff. So I'm going to jump back to the character view model, and the thing we want to bind to our view is going to be a list of characters, Rick and Morty characters. I'm going to say var characters is an array of character. That's all we have to do to make it bind. If we want it to not bind, we can say observation ignored as such. But we want it to bind, so I'm not going to put that. Then we actually need to make the network call. So I'm just going to make that happen on init. And we're using async, so we're going to need a task. So I'm going to make a task, fire it off, and I'm going to say do let, I'll just call it response equals try await network calls dot characters, and then let's catch the error, and we can print error fetching characters, and there's an invisible variable here called error, and we can print the localized description. So there's the response. Now, interestingly, we don't know what thread we're on. We can mark this task as main actor, and we'll be on the main actor. But the way I prefer to do it is to do await main actor dot run and say self dot characters equals response dot results. And now our UI will update on the main thread. So let's jump back to content view, and we'll actually use this. So I'm going to make a scroll view, and then a lazy VStack. And we've got to loop through those characters. To be able to loop through them, I'm first going to make them identifiable. So in addition to decodable, they will be identifiable. I'll jump back to the content view. I'll do a little for each, and it's going to be character view model dot characters character in. And for right now, let's make it as simple as possible. It'll just be a text with character name. So we can see it worked. There's our list of character names. Okie dokie, okie dokie. Rich, rich, rich. Money, money, money. So let's, instead of just doing these names, make a cell for the character. And if you want, you can just download the project and copy my code for the cell, but I'm going to go ahead and build it on the video. The rest of this is mainly just some SwiftUI stuff. So I'm gonna make a SwiftUI view, and I'll call this character cell. Character cell. Now, interestingly, I want to pass a character into this character cell. And right here in the preview, we're gonna want that right away, or we won't be able to have this preview run. So I'm going to go to character and make a mock. So as we did our mock view model, I'm gonna say static func mock, returning a character. And I'm just going to return a character, taking all the arguments. And we could generate this mock from JSON. I like to do it using just the data as such. There's no right or wrong way. But I'm just gonna copy that from the actual response. So this will be for Rick. I'm just gonna literally copy all this stuff in there. Rick Sanchez, he's alive, he's human, he's male, alive, human, male, and the image is this guy. There we go. Now we've got a mock character object. I'll go back to character cell and say let character be a character. Then down here in the preview, we can say character is our character.mock. And for the text, we can do the character.name. And we can already see our preview reflects Rick Sanchez. Then if we jump back to content view, we can chop down this text and do a character cell with this character. And it's gonna look the same, but we're now using this new cell. So now I'm going to add a couple of constants and start building out some stuff for the cell. I'm kind of doing this in backwards order. Sometimes you'll want to build it out and then build the constants, but these will just be constants. Constants. And I'm going to make a thumb size. So I'm going to say static let thumb size be a CG float of 96. And static let thumb shape equals a rounded rectangle of corner radius 16. And static let thumb background color equals color.white, and static let thumb foreground color equals color.gray. So our image can be in one of several states, and one of those states is loading. We're probably never going to see that state, but it is possible for it to be loading. So I'm going to make a function called loading, and this will return the opaque type some view, and I'm going to return a zstack, and I'm going to give it a frame with a width of constants.thumb size and a height of constants.thumb size, and a background of constants.thumb shape, and a foreground style of constants.thumb thumb background color. And for loading, we'll use a progress view, and we'll tint it with constants dot thumb. It should be foreground color, not doorground. Thumb foreground color. So for the body, we can just put this loading view for now and see what that looks like. It's kind of hard to see because the background is white and the loading cell is also white. So let's go ahead and build out a little bit more. So I'm going to put this loading thing inside of something called thumb. So thumb will be some view. And this will be our thumb in whatever state it is. But for right now, I'm just going to make it be a Z stack with our loading cell. All right, so now let's kind of make the whole cell have like a little bit of a different color. I'm gonna add a couple more constants. Static let cell, I'll give it a shape too. Cell shape be a rounded rectangle, and the corner radius can be 20. And static let cell padding horizontal be a CG float 12, and static let cell background color be a color, and we'll use the red, green, blue alpha. And for this one, I'm going to pick 0.78, 0.82, 0.84. So now in the body, I'm going to actually put the outer cell. So instead of just loading, I'm going to make a Z stack. Or actually an H stack. And I'll put the loading thing in there and a spacer. And then I'm going to give it a background of constants dot cell shape, and the foreground style will be constants dot cell background color. Rock and roll, rock and roll, rockin' and rollin'. Rollin' and rockin', rockin' and rollin'. All right, let's add that little padding too. So I'm gonna say dot padding horizontal of constants dot cell padding horizontal. And we want this thumb to be not exactly the size of the cell background. So let's introduce another little thing called thumb padding. So I'm gonna say static let thumb padding is CG float 4.0. And then for the thumb, I'm gonna say dot padding dot all constants dot thumb padding. It doesn't look like the preview updated. No worries. Let's press on. So now we've got this loading view. I'm also gonna make an error view. So So I'm just gonna copy and paste loading, and I'm gonna make error. And instead of progress view, I'm going to put an image with a system name of photo. And I'm gonna make that have a particular size, which will be a font of a system size of 44. So now the thumb, I'm going to put error instead of loading. And we can try to close and reopen the preview and see if it'll generate. Oh, you know, we're just using loading. We're not using thumb. There we go. So there's the little error view. Now we want to put like the name. So I'm gonna make another one of these things and say static let cell foreground color name, and just have that be black. Then I'm going to make another one of these functions called name, returning some view. And this will be an hstack with the text of character.name. And for the font, I'll do a system font of size 24. And for the weight, I'll pick semi-bold. And the foreground style will be constants dot self foreground color name. I'd like to see that name show up real quick, so I'm just gonna put it right there in the body. There it is, Rick Sanchez. I'm just gonna delete it because that's not how I'm gonna use it. I just wanted to see it work real quick. Then I want to make like some little data pair labels. So I'm going to make those two other colors, and I'm just going to copy paste. So we have name, and then there's also going to be a label and then a data. So the label color, I'm going to do an RGB of 0.225. 0.225 and 0.265. And the foreground color will also be a manual one. I'll put 0.135 and 0.145 and 0.185. Then as we have name, I'm going to make a func called pair. And it will get a label and a value and return some view. And this will be an hstack. There will be a text. And we want the label as label, and then like a little colon label. And then the font will be a system font, size 18. And the weight here will be regular. And then the foreground style will be constants dot cell foreground color label. And I'll do the copy pasta, boom, boom. And instead of regular for the data, we'll do semi-bold. And this won't be label, this will be value. And this will be the other one, foreground color, data. Let's test pair real quick. So if I make a pair of like A and B, oops, it's a little pair, we should see it show up. And those argument names. There it is. So I'm gonna again delete it. And now what I want to do is make like the whole right side of this thing. And I'm just gonna call that all info. So func info, some view, and this will be a VStack. And I'll put the name in there. And now these things can be optional, so they might not exist. So if let status equal character.status, then I'm gonna put one of these pairs of status and status. And I'm just gonna do that 3 times. So we'll have status and species, 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 and then gender, 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 gender. And in the pair, I think I also want to put a spacer so that they're all left aligned. So now the body is going to be thumb and info. And I think I also want a spacer in the name one, so that's left aligned. Spacer. Cool. That's what I wanted. The very last thing is to make the thumbnail work. So let's do that now. So in thumb, I'm going to, instead of just showing the error, I'm going to say if let image URL equals character.image, we'll do one thing. Otherwise, we will show the error. And in this case, we also need the URL. So I'm going to say also let URL equals URL with string image URL. Then in this case, we can do an async image. And this will be the URL. And we can get a phase. So this will be our phase. So it's, the preview is going nuts. Let's not worry about that for now. So I'm going to switch on that phase. And we see we get these things: empty, success, and failure. So in the success case, we want to show the image. And we can make it resizable. And we can give it an aspect ratio of content mode.fill. And we can give it a frame of width, constants dot thumb size, and height, constants dot thumb size. And finally, a clip shape of constants dot thumb shape. In the error case, we just want to show error. This doesn't show you, but there's some other cases too, which we can include with empty. So we can just say default, and this will be loading. So it'll be loading if nothing else. So we named it error, and there's this thing called error. We don't need that thing called error. So there we go. We got Rick Sanchez in the building. Then if we go to content view, we can see they all load. And if I turn my internet off, we won't have internet, and then they'll all have errors. Interestingly, the network call still works because of caching. So go ahead, download the project, and please enjoy. Please. Enjoy.